very beneficial for everybody. In any event, the subject today is reinforcing our youth's American Muslim identity. And I chose to go with American Muslim identity because it is just that. Our children today, as we are American Muslims. And being one doesn't necessarily take away from the other, in my opinion. They reinforce each other. So if you do one well, you definitely do the other as well. Going from there, the etymology of the term, the idiom, American Muslim identity. What does that mean? Basically, when we ask that question, it begs the question, who are we, right? Our kids are like, who are they? So when they start thinking like this, it's going to be evident that they're going to become very frustrated, very confused about what it actually entails. You're part American, you're part Muslim, but how do you make it cohesive? How do you become one? And that's the trick. Are they conflicted? Do you guys feel that being American and being Muslim are conflicting? How many of you feel that way? How many of you feel whole? How many of you feel they go hand in hand? I feel that way. Do you stop to think, oh, am I American or am I Muslim? We don't stop to do that. But you know what? When you're a teenager, when you're in an American school, it makes a difference. At some points, issues do come up, and you have to reconcile it within yourself to be able to say, okay, well, how do I fit in? So, needless to say, these kids get confused, and you can understand how these youth are feeling, whether they be boys or girls. So, okay, so let's talk about the identity of these kids. Who establishes their identity? How does a child or how does a young person identify themselves? Do you ever think about that? Where do they get their identity from? Who's the driving force? Who do you guys think?
Parents.
The parents. If the parents aren't the driving force, who becomes the driving force? For somebody who's easily influenced. Society, right? The people around, the environments, the peers, the schools, that they meet and mix up with. And this is something that we as parents have to think about. If you don't take the time to sit them down and help them establish their identity, somebody else will, right? And it's not necessarily the right person. We always think about what we want from our kids. I know as a parent, most of the time when you're raising kids, you're like, okay, I have the plan in my head, I have the blueprint, I know what it takes to raise a good child, whether they be a boy or girl. Is that correct? So we're always indulging ourselves with our own thoughts. How many of us take the time to actually look at the perspective of a young person, especially this generation? Why is this generation different than previous generations? Why do you guys think?
Technology.
Technology is a big deal, but what is the major factor? Politically, what's happened? That's we've actually lived. The history of 911, right? I mean, that in our lives we can speak to. Usually we listen or we learn history, we learn from books. It doesn't have the same effect. But when you actually live the occurrence, it has a definite residual effect. So you have this new generation who's living in the post-911 era. What do you think they're going through? How many feel that we've gone through a backlash as a Muslim since 911? I mean, is that obvious or what? So it's not just adults going through backlashes, it's our children going through backlashes. Can you imagine what they're hearing?
Oh, I know what they're hearing. Somebody tells me. She gets called ISIS every single day. I mean,
That's right. What do you do when your child is called ISIS? How frustrating is that for a mother? I mean, what do you want to do? Do you just want to go and just take care of business?
Yes.
I bet you, and by the way, she's a black belt, so I wouldn't mess with her. But yeah, absolutely. It evokes that kind of feeling, let's face it. We're protected. Every mother wants to, protect your own. But on a serious note, what do we do with our own kids? I mean, how many of you have even sat to think about talking to your kids about that? How many kids have come home and talked to their parents about what they're going through? How are the channels between you and your own? It's words to think about. So that's definitely a very excruciating circumstance that they go through. What other things? Shusha, you mentioned technology, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to a couple of more. Okay, so the fitting in issue. They go to school. How many children, I know that this is like the majority of our kids, don't fit in. they don't fit in a certain mold, right? They don't fit in a certain mold. That's pretty much described by other youth. I think it feels not to fit in. You know, we sit in the lap of luxury of our homes, right? You do your own tasks. You don't really, unless you have to, you don't come across people of different cultures, right? Of different religions maybe. But our kids do, because they're going to schools that have children of other races and other religions, and may unfortunately look derogatorily against Muslims. So what happens to our kids? I mean, as it is, kids get bullied, right? You don't have to be a Muslim child to get bullied. But the fact that you are Muslim adds to that. You get ridiculed. You get name called. How many of you are aware of this? How many of you have sat actually with their children and talked about this? Because I can guarantee you, if it hasn't happened to your child knows somebody who it has happened to. I mean, that goes without saying. No child is immune. So that's something to think about. And then we come up with the issue of peer pressure. What does peer pressure think, or what does it feel like? What do you guys think peer pressure feels like?
Well, that's the whole fitting in. That's how you fit in, the peer pressure to shove you in that mold.
Because it's the driving force, right? It puts you in the fitting in mold. But I mean, a lot of times, as adults, culturally, let's face it, women look at other women. A woman buys something extravagant, oh, well, why does she have it? Why can't I have it, right? A woman sees somebody doing something, she comes and tries and influences her to maybe affect her one way or another. If we endure pressure as well, socially, imagine what kids are enduring. The reason I'm really drilling on this is because I don't think we give our kids enough credit. We don't take the time to understand what it feels like to be treading in their shoes. And if we did, we'd understand a lot of what's going on, because there's obviously a lot going on, right? And then obviously the culprit or the benefit of social media. And that's debatable, right? That's a whole monster in itself. Because that can be a pro and that can be a negative, depending how it's used. But it's a reality in their life. And it's a reality that they weren't born knowing how to deal with. So it's something that they're going to work into. It's something that they actually need to learn how to work into. So where do we even start with that? So you have all these factors, and those are just the major ones, right? And then you have them all, and they're boiling within them, these kids. What does it lead to in their thought process? It leads to a lot of chaos, leads to a lot of confusion. They don't know where they fit in. They don't know how to deal with this. So this is all being within them, right? They're introverted. They're taking all this in. Some mothers have channels with their kids. I mean, this is just something that it happens, and that's wonderful. But if you don't have that, you don't know what's going within, what's happening within your own child's psyche. But then you take all these factors, and in conjunction with that, you find out that they really don't have a foundation for Islam. Okay? So they weren't taught Islam as a subject. You teach them math, you teach them English, you teach them science. We're gung-ho on all these activities, but do we really put the same weight on religion? Because if it's important for you for your child to have a Muslim identity, then it should be important for you to understand that you need to give them the ammunition to have that identity. Where are they going to get that identity from? Home can give, if you are lucky enough to have parents to actually teach Islam, and I'm not talking culturally, and I'm not talking virtuous, to be like virtue, right and wrong. I'm talking Islam as a foundation, to be the foundation of one's identity. You're lucky if you have parents that can give that to you. The second alternative would be a school. And when you have a school that you can go to give that to, then you are really doing great. And as it turns out, we do have a school here. And so do I advocate going to a Muslim school? I think it's something that every parent should decide on their own, but me personally, absolutely. I do advocate it, because I think it grounds them. I think it gives them the foundation that's going to allow them to go out there and endure the hardships that they're going to. And mark my words, I have 3 children. And by the way, all of my children attended Salon Academy to a point because it only went up to 8th grade. And I wished it even went to high school. And my kids are doing wonderful. But there isn't a day that I don't worry as a mother as well. So I can't imagine anybody who doesn't have children in Islamic school. Now, if they don't go to an Islamic school, then you need to compensate for that. And that's where the parents come in. And it's a privilege when you're able to teach your children about their fundamental beliefs. Because without that, how do you expect a child to act Islamically if they don't have the teachings of Islam? And what is Islam? I mean, when I say teachings, am I talking culture? Because I know we're teaching them culture. There is no two ways about it, right? Culture is an issue, actually. Culture has become very problematic, by the way. I mean, part of me wants to even leave it. I mean, I don't want to go on and on, digress, because there's so much to talk about, but I try not to because I really want to stick to the issue. But I want to touch on one thing about culture. In our culture, even as adults, what have you noticed? Culture has played a part in the Islamic identity. So if you're from Pakistan and you're a Muslim, you're a Paki Muslim. If you're from Palestine and you're a Muslim, you're a Palestinian Muslim. If you're from Europe and you're European, there's cliques from within, right? And how does that actually reflect on our kids? Confusion. It's just another parameter for them, it's another factor to work on. Where do I fit in? So now I'm not just a Muslim, I'm not just American, I'm also a different kind of Muslim, so look at all this confusion. And you wonder what's going on in the minds of our kids, right? And if you think kids don't feel this, really, you should think again. Because I know of instances where it's apparent, and I've heard parents complain too. Because it's not fair, because what ends up happening, to be honest with you, and it's something that I'm actually recognizing more and more, and I'm not happy with it, is the occurrence of double standards. Depending on where you come from in the Muslim world, right? And one sister, Khadija, actually brought up the issue of double standards between boys and girls too. I mean, that's a whole other field, right? Let's face it, that exists. A smart parent doesn't. Obviously you have boys, you have girls, they live by the same standards, but it's not the case with everybody. So it's just one more issue for the kids, for the girls, for the boys to be frustrated. All right? How do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? How do you think, what's been the solution? So one approach, one school of thought, I know it happens where parents just say, okay, I know my kids are going through this, and I know my kids feel like they're different, so the way I'm going to deal with it is I'm going to let them fit in. I'm going to give them allowances. So if they want to dress the way their friends are dressing, you know what? I'm going to bear it and grunt, because I just want them to feel part of it. I don't want them to feel unordinary. That happens all the time, does it not? You know, and to the point where their identity, for sure, is skewed by the way they dress. So then that takes us to another dilemma. Well, socially, these kids have different social values, right? And so your child comes to you, for these types of parents, and they say, well, you know, I want to go to the prom, because if I don't go to the prom, I'm going to be the oddball. And having started with this philosophy, where does the parent draw the line, right? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Either way, it's going to cause problems. The longer you let that line grow, the harder it's going to be to go back. So you find parents saying, okay, they can go to the prom. But you know what? If you're a girl, you tell your daughter, just hang out with the girls, do not talk to the boys. And if you're a boy, you say, well, you know what, just stay with your buddies, don't talk to the girls. And it's wishful thinking. I've done my Islamic duty, right? How many actually people think that? There are. And you know what, this is not, I have to say, I am no shape or form, this is not to offend anybody, but this is a reality. Because when you look at our society, you see people dealing with issues differently. And everybody may have their own, justification, but I'm talking in a general perspective. That in itself can lead to issues. So that's one approach. What's the other approach? The ironclad approach. No. Well, can I dress like, no.
Absolutely no.
Can I go? No. Can I do that? No. So you're thinking, I'm just not gonna let them do it because I'm gonna protect them. And if they don't do it, I know I can sleep at night, right? How many of us are accused of saying no to our kids? Right? Some have to put two hands up, right? What is your name?
Ask my son.
All you have to do, you know what? All I have to do is ask our kids, including my own, right? But we really truly think that we're protecting them. And we think that just by doing that, you know, but we don't realize that, you know what? We can keep them in our homes and we shelter them and that's fine and dandy. And under those, you know, guidelines, they're fine. But what happens the minute they step out of the house? So
Breaks loose.
yeah, they break loose, exactly. But the thing is, so which approach is better? Which approach do you guys think is better?
I like the both worlds.
They're both wrong, right?
Put them in a cage or
Put
something.
them in a cage. Put them in a cage and
Give
put
them
them
a little bit of
25,
this and a
right?
little bit of that.
What's that?
You give them a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You
Good job.
explain why you're saying this, and you explain why you're allowing to do what you're
That's
allowing them to
that's
do.
a good job, exactly. The answer lies in between. The answer lies in between.
Party or.
And you know what? Yeah, it's hard. You know what? I know that different people have different kids from different age groups, and trust me, it's so much easier raising kids under 10. Trust me.
Amen.
Trust me. You think you have problems? You know, I used to have my kids under 10, and they'd say, and mothers would say, enjoy them. You have no hardships. You have no headaches. And I'm like, I wake up. I do this. No, it's true. After they get into their teenage years, your worries have begun. And guess what? They don't stop. Because you continue to worry from step to step, from stage to stage, and it never ends. And the worry takes a different shape, a different form, right? But some worries are tolerable. Some worries we were born to have because you can't be a parent and not. You know, it's the best of both worlds, and it's it's a hardship as well, having kids, right? However, I think it's time for us to make a change. So where's the solution, Sabiha? $1,000,000 question.
Yeah, if you ask me, because I've also raised kids for the past 26 years in this community.
Yeah.
We need to, mashallah, we need to go ahead and have a group, like a club or something, where they can relate to, because the mosque gets too stifling. People, oh, did you pray? Are you dressed this way? Blah, blah, blah. They don't need to answer those questions. They need to meet Muslims in their age group or whatever, hang out, have whatever, but at the same time they can be free and enjoy, and we can be rest assured that they are not out there hanging or doing something wrong, and that is lacking in our community.
You know what? She touches on a very good point. Kids need venues. They need places. They need safe havens to be able to go and be themselves. Now, one of what I was about to say is the solution lies within us, really. We have to change. As parents, we have to change. Our priorities have to shift a little bit. You never stop wanting the best for your child, but how you give your child the best is disputable, right? You have to understand that they have a right to vent their opinion to you. They have a right to express. For you to turn around and say, no, you cannot do, like we were told. I know, I grew up, honest to God, I think, I'm sure you can all agree with me that we were the perfect children. Our parents, I mean, you talk about how we raise our children, right? And then how many times have I caught myself telling I never did that to my mom. I never talked to my dad. How many times, right? How many times have we told them? I've never done that. What are you talking? You know, and then they say, oh, we know, you're the perfect one.
Yeah.
Right? How many have heard that? Guilty as charged, because we do use that. But it's all coming from the same place. It's coming because we love our children. Now, initially, I do agree. I agree that we need venues, we need places to have our children vent. It should be our homes. Okay, it starts with our homes, seriously. It starts with parents addressing their children, and parents having a lot of patience, right? Sometimes I wish there was a pill somebody can take. Okay, press up your arms. God, maybe we can come up
Punching
with that.
bag.
Punching bag. Yeah, let out your frustration and then go back, calm and cool and collected. Yeah, that would work. The problem is it doesn't, you have to have patience dealing with kids. So we need to provide these kinds of venues. It starts with the home. I agree with you, we need places where our kids can go to. It's the primary reason why I'm going to start with these workshops. Because the workshops that I'm going to be conducting are going to provide a very safe, a very conducive, a very tolerant place to hear frank discussion from our youth. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to reach their hearts and minds. But most I want to hear what they have to say, because you know what? I'm going to show you some of the work that I've done with some of our youth. They never cease to amaze me. They have so much in them. They make me so proud, and I know that this applies to each and every one of our kids. We just have to take the time and discover them, and they have to discover themselves. And having gone to that point, after that you have to face reality, because you can't shelter your kids and keep them locked up in one room. The point of having this haven is for them to have a grounded foundation of their identity. Once they have that established, no matter where they go in the real world, because eventually they do go to the real world, right? They're equipped, and you've done your part. I've always told my kids, and when I say my kids, I'm talking about my immediate kids, my nieces, my nephews, and everybody else's kids. They become my kids. But what I always say, I can't change the world out there. But what I try to do, and this is really where how my work revolves, is I try to give them ammunition, really. I give them the proper tools that they can take with them to face the world. And I think as parents, that's the best that we can offer. But if we do offer that, then you know what? They're going to be just fine. And they go on to the real world, because you're going to be able to mix and hold on to your identity. You're not shaken. But the world is a beautiful place. And the beauty lies in meeting other people, from other cultures, from other religions. But unless you are okay with who you are, you're not going to be happy to meet other people either. Having said that, I want to go back to the issue of my workshops. Like I said, I do the workshops primarily, really I came up with this idea because of a lot of what I've been hearing in the community. I didn't touch on a certain point, I think I skipped it. But you hear about incidents in all communities, by the way. I have friends all over the United States, even in Europe. And I promise you, there are incidents happening everywhere. There are children that are experimenting, if you will. And then people, to be honest with you, people have the audacity to judge them. They turn around and they can just make blanket statements about them. And I disagree with that philosophy, because you have to have more depth in your perception. Children who are experimenting, I think as adults we have to recognize that for the most part, there are underlying reasons why they are doing this. And if they've drifted, most of the time it's because there's been a parent that's driven them away. So if, for the parents that subscribe to the notion that I'm going to allow them to do as they please or try to fit in with their group because I don't want them to be hurt, they need to take that into consideration. There's going to come a point where they won't be able to reel them back in. And they will drift in that respect. And that's something that's going to be very hard to deal with. And to be honest with you, our community is not even equipped to deal with something like that. And this is something we have to address as a community. Because it can happen to any one of our children. Anyone. Anyone is impressionable.
Do you need the lights, maybe?
Do I need the lights? I'm okay. Are you guys, is it getting darker?
fine with the light on.
I'm almost, you think it's on? Well, I don't know. You know what, let's keep it, because we're almost done anyway. So, what do I do with these workshops? What's the ultimate goal? My ultimate goals are this. I want to empower our youth, I want to educate them, and I want to enlighten them. These are three things that I want to do with our youth. And to be honest with you, I do have some episodes, and I know a lot of you have already seen them on YouTube. And the name is The Red Hearted. And my ultimate goal of doing The Red Hearted is to create leaders in our children. And when you hear these children speak, you know exactly what I'm after. You'll see leaders, because I'm going to show you right now some excerpts of some children speaking. And you be the judge, but as far as I'm concerned, they are leaders in their own right, and I'm very proud of them. But they're a work in progress, so it's something I want to continue doing with them. So without further ado, I just want to take a few